Okay, so I have gotten a triplanar mapping with parallax occlusion mapping working. There wasn't really anything documented about this on the internet beforehand. I'm not the best at explaining things, and there might be a better way to do this, but I still want to show my progress. I have this test material here. Nothing too crazy at the start, just my materials and then the UVs that I'm using for this. So I had to do a lot of different triplanar projection methods, and I kind of made an amalgamation of a bunch of the ones I've used before. So first you just get the coordinates like usual, except you do want to swizzle this, or not swizzle, invert this Z on that one. And then there's this new section here where I took care of the swizzling of the vectors. So you get the normal world space for the vertex, sine with a multiply, and this is -1, 1, 1 on the vector we're multiplying it with. And then when you break these out, you append them with 1, and then you multiply them up here. And so this lerp node right here is all that's needed for the walls to work, but that will not make the floors work, and I'll go more in that later. This only worked for those axes. But we did still need to lerp this here for later. It's just that plugging that in there didn't quite work out. And I also have some dithering mask between the planes. And this Z plane here will be needed for later. Looks like this wasn't. That's right, it was the Z plane that's needed, not this. This lerp node's kind of useless. Anyways, vertex normal world space again. And then we have a sharpness here. You can make a parameter for that. I didn't bother. I'm not going to explain through this because I don't exactly know everything I'm talking about, but this is what worked. I sort of found some resources and combined a bunch of what I was finding together. In this, I just used the standard dither. Resources I found were using a blue noise dither, which I didn't bother with. But anyways, you hook that X up as the lerp for this alpha, and the Z for the lerp for this alpha. And this I ended up just moving back here, because I did end up needing to use the parallax occlusion mapping twice. I tried to do it with just one node, couldn't get it to happen. So just use 2. That's still better than 3, right? So anyways, from this one up here, this just goes straight into the UVs here. And this node is actually a custom one that I made that handles all my occlusion mapping. It has all the same inputs with a added rotation input that I'll go through as well, because it's really nice to have. And there's also a use non-tangent parallax occlusion static bool that I've added in here. And this top one uses it, and this bottom one doesn't. And that's because for the top plane, I actually just made the top plane in tangent space because I couldn't get it to work without that. But if I go into here, this is very simple. I just have all my parameters that would go into the parallax occlusion, except I plug them into either a MF parallax occlusion with rotation or parallax occlusion non-tangent. Now, if you don't want rotation, this can just be the normal parallax occlusion node. and then a custom one you'll have to make for the non-tangent version, which is used up here. And this is going to be whichever one is up here. And then I just have the results switching based on that use non-tangent parallax occlusion in there. So I'm going to go through the rotation one first, just so we can snowball into the bigger one. They both have the changes. This is mostly the exact same as the default parallax occlusion node, just make a copy of it. And the only things changed here is I have added this custom rotator and the scalar parameter. And this goes right into this add node. And you'll notice this rotation scalar also goes down here where I have another custom rotator with the center as 0 actually, and not 0.5 as 0. It has to be 0. Doesn't work at 0.5 or else it twists. But you plug that in there, and that's the only difference in this one. Just those two custom rotators being inserted in. And the reason I had to have that in there is if you try to use a custom rotator on the UVs before or after the occlusion mapping, it doesn't work. The effect will not actually rotate, but now you can just insert the angle and the whole texture will rotate with it, simply by plugging in your angle here. Okay, so for the non-tangent one that I have right here, there's a little more added. So all of this is newly added in. So you get the camera vector node and an inverse transform matrix, and this was from Prismatica dev, so I don't completely understand this either. But he went through this for a decal tutorial and it ended up helping out here. So here's the -1 transform vector, and this has to be local space to world space. It can't be tangent space, it has to be local. So -1, 1, 1. You can use your eyes, you can see it. And then, so for the Z, it'll be this top one. The Y is this middle one, and the X is this last one. So basically the X and the Z are swizzled. And you normalize that, and you have a named reroute node for custom camera vector. And basically anywhere where it says camera vector in this graph, you want to use this instead. So just Control F and replace them with these. The only one you do not want to change is this one right here. This camera vector had to be the camera vector. I don't know why, but it had to be this one for it to work. I just happened to stumble across that. But besides that, also I don't know if I changed this at all, but this should be world space to tangent space in this transform vector. But those are really the only changes. There's also this light vector swizzle, which was also in the Prismatica dev video. I don't know if this is really needed, but you might want to add this in anyways. I think you only need this if you're going to use shadows. But if you're trying to do parallax occlusion and triplanar at the same time, I can't imagine you also would want shadows at the same time, or else this is going to be a very expensive material. And it already is fairly expensive. Definitely more expensive than nanite tessellation. But I'm in 5.2, so I can't use that, which is why I went down this path. But those are the only changes. Make sure you do use Control F, because there's a lot of sneaky ones in there. But once you have that, right, and you don't have to make this, you could just do all of that here. I did it for my own sake, for simplification and for future reference, so I could switch between tangent space and not whenever I want. But this lerp goes into here. These are all your parameters, like your height map. And also for optimization, it's better to have your height map be really, really low res, as low as you can get it without your effect just looking terrible. Since these rely on the actual pixel count of the height map, that's the best way to optimize it. I have learned. But yeah, those are just typical shit you would put in there. For this bottom one, the UVs are just the z-axis, so the xy from the absolute world position. And that's just my tiling scale, and you just put that in there. But use the exact same things here, except for one thing. This use world coordinates has to be true on this one, because this is not using the tangent space one. This is just the regular parallax mapping one. So you need to have that set to true, while it's false up here. Even though this is kind of like in world 2, this has to be false, and this one has to be true. I don't completely get why, but it works. It's in this z-plane down here from before is what is going to be used in the alpha that lerps the two of these together. And then this is what you use for your UVs here. And it just works. This is only diagonal up here because, you know, it's actually genuinely diagonal in my world axis. But yeah. I was going to optimize this with some, if I can find the, come on. I gotta search for it here. So I can get the parent of this. I was messing around with optimizations, and it doesn't seem like the it doesn't seem like the lerping with the camera depth fade actually saves performance, because from what I was reading online, even though it's using a lerp, it's still calculating both sides of the lerp, you know, every frame. Even if it's only fully using one side, it still calculates the both of them, which is unfortunate, because it would be nice to have the effect lerp from camera distance like I was doing previously, and have it actually boost performance. But really, if anything, it's like slightly worse performance, because now it has to have another lerp in there. But yeah, if I get far enough away, you can see the effect disappears. But unfortunately, that does nothing for performance, which is kind of lame. But hey, what you gonna do about it, right? Anyways, that's about it. If anyone out there can make a better way to do this than what I've done, please let me know, because I'm really curious. I kind of had to stitch together four to five different videos that were like vaguely related in order to actually figure this out to this point. I'm just glad to have it working though, honestly, and it looks great. But yeah, I'm gonna end it here.